It was December 1944. The trees of the Ardennes stood like skeletal silhouettes beneath a sky heavy with snow. The wind sliced through the forest, pushing flakes sideways across the frozen ground. Under a camouflage net inside an M10 Wolverine tank destroyer, Private First Class Ray Thompson peered through a fogged periscope. His gloved hands shook, not from fear, but from the cold seeping through steel and bone. Just 800 yards away, a German armored column wound its way through the forest. 12 tanks, mostly Panzerfuß, with a Tiger I in the lead. Behind them rumbled half-tracks full of infantry and fuel trucks bringing up the rear. Their destination, a crossroads near Neuville, the lifeline for the 101st Airborne trapped in Bastogne. Thompson had orders to observe only. No firing without command confirmation. But what he saw through that scope would force a decision that changed everything. 3 days earlier, inside a drafty Belgian farmhouse, the men of the 702nd Tank Destroyer Battalion received their orders. "No one fires without clearance," the commanding officer warned. "I don't care how close they are. We don't give away our position unless ordered." The men nodded in silence. Outside, the Battle of the Bulge had just begun. Under fog and snow, over 200,000 German troops and 1,000 tanks slammed into the Allied lines. American positions crumbled. Units vanished overnight. Friendly fire incidents spiked. The rule, wait for orders, was meant to prevent chaos. For Thompson, that meant long, freezing hours of observation. His M10 was dug into a ridge overlooking a narrow forest road north of Neuville. The crew scanned for movement. Thompson logged tank tracks, bearings, and wind speeds in a small notebook his mother had mailed him from Kansas. Once, he tracked a lone Panzer for nearly an hour without firing. He followed the rule, but as days passed and more German armor moved through the trees, he began to wonder if silence was truly safer. Raymond Charles Thompson was no natural-born warrior. He came from western Kansas, flatland, open skies, and endless wind. His father ran a small engine repair shop. His mother taught math. Ray grew up surrounded by tools and equations, building contraptions and measuring shadows to calculate distance. He enlisted in 1942, not for glory, but for opportunity. The Army offered training and a path to engineering. What he got instead was Normandy. By the time he reached France, he was 22 and looked older. He survived the hedgerow fighting, where visibility was measured in feet and death in seconds. He saw friends burned alive, others blown apart. Luck lost its meaning. What kept him alive was pattern, angles, timing, observation. He began carrying a small spiral notebook, sketching every German vehicle he encountered. Armor thickness, weak points, turret rotation time. Other soldiers nicknamed him the quiet clock. He didn't speak much, but when he did, it was time to the second. Thompson wasn't reckless. He was deliberate. He saw the battlefield like geometry, a moving equation to be solved. Fog clung low across the Ardennes. Visibility was barely 50 yards. Through the periscope, Thompson spotted them. 12 tanks moving single file through the trees, the Tiger I leading like a steel predator. It was a textbook German armored column, tanks up front, infantry in the middle, fuel and support in the rear. The road was narrow, hemmed in by steep forest banks. No room to scatter, no room to turn. To Thompson, it wasn't just a column. It was a trap waiting to happen. But his radio was dead. Command contact was lost. According to protocol, he was to observe and report. But he wasn't watching a passing convoy. He was watching a blade heading straight for Neuville. If the Germans took that crossroads, Bastogne would be lost. He adjusted his scope, calculated the range, and made his choice. Waiting, he decided, was no longer caution. It was suicide. Thompson had never fired without orders. Not once. But staring through that scope, he realized the window for action was closing. He breathed once, adjusted the elevation, and pulled the trigger. The M10 roared. Its first armor-piercing round slammed into the 3rd Panzer in line. The explosion tore through the quiet forest, sending smoke and flame into the fog. Before the echo faded, Thompson shifted position, 5 yards to the left, to confuse German spotters. He fired again. The sixth vehicle, a half-track full of infantry, went up in fire and screams. His third shot hit the eighth vehicle, a fuel truck. The resulting blast rocked the forest, fire jetting skyward, trees shattering. Within seconds, the entire road was a choking inferno. The German column froze. The Tiger tried to reverse, but the road was too tight. Vehicles collided. Flames spread. Panic rippled through the formation. Thompson had fired just 3 shots, but he'd turned order into chaos. Thompson's firing sequence wasn't random. It was deliberate geometry. Hit the third vehicle, block the front. Hit the sixth, split the formation. Hit the eighth, ignite the retreat. He didn't destroy the column head-on. He collapsed it from within. German gunners fired wildly into the trees, convinced they were caught in a full-scale ambush. They saw muzzle flashes in every direction, phantoms created by smoke and fear. To them, it felt like a battery of American tank destroyers. In truth, it was one Wolverine and a crew of 3. Thompson kept moving, 10 yards here, 20 there, each position carefully chosen for elevation and cover. Every shot was a calculation, every pause a breath in the equation. By the 30-minute mark, 5 vehicles burned. 3 more were crippled. The forest was a wall of fire and twisted steel. Finally, the Tiger turned its turret toward him. Thompson waited, knowing the Tiger's flank armor was weak during rotation. When the angle was right, he fired his 5th shell. It hit perfectly. The Tiger's side exploded, and seconds later its ammunition cooked off. The turret launched into the air like a rocket. The German formation disintegrated. Survivors fled into the trees. The road became a graveyard of metal and snow. Hours later, captured German officers tried to explain what happened. There were many guns, one lieutenant stammered. Maybe 6, maybe more. A full battery American interrogators exchanged looks. There had been no battery, just one M10. Other prisoners claimed paratrooper ambushes, hidden mines, or booby traps. Some swore they saw multiple muzzle flashes. Their minds filled the blanks with ghosts. Even seasoned commanders refused to believe one gunner had done it. But Thompson's pattern, targeting specific vehicles to create collapse, was unlike anything in German doctrine. It was psychological warfare through geometry. When U.S. forces arrived to clear the road, they found wreckage piled like dominoes. Tanks fused together by fire, snow blackened by soot, and not a single American casualty. The Germans began calling it Die Geister Battery, the Ghost Battery. Thompson expected punishment. He had fired without orders, after all. When he filed his report, his commanding officer, Captain Langston, read it in silence. Thompson's sketches, diagrams, and range notes filled pages. If this had gone wrong, Langston said finally, if even one of those had been friendly, I knew what I saw, Thompson replied. Langston sighed. No one authorized this, Thompson. I know. Langston didn't discipline him, not yet. Instead, he told him to rest while he sent it upstairs. Thompson waited for the court-martial that never came. 2 days later, scouts from the 101st Airborne reached the area. They expected to find the road crawling with German armor. Instead, they found smoldering wrecks. When they asked which unit had done it, Langston said simply, not a unit. One gunner. The story spread across the front. The man from Kansas who stopped a column by himself. Some said 10 tanks, others said 5 shots. The myth grew faster than the paperwork. When the official investigation concluded, it found no clear evidence of disobedience. The radio lines had been jammed. Thompson's crew had tried to report, but nothing got through. The results spoke for themselves. 7 vehicles destroyed, 4 disabled, 0 American losses, 1 vital supply route saved. Thompson wasn't punished. Instead, he was quietly reassigned to teach firing pattern theory, how to break armored columns through sequence, not brute force. His diagrams were sent to Fort Sill, where artillery officers began studying them. Langston visited him weeks later. You know, he said, I was ready to report you for insubordination. Then I read that line of yours. Controlled collapse. What did you mean by that? Thompson wiped his hands on a rag. When you pull one stone from a wall, he said, the rest falls if you know where to pull. Langston smiled. Next time you decide to knock down a wall, just give me some warning. Thompson didn't smile back. To him, it wasn't victory. It was math. After the war, Ray Thompson went home to Kansas. He opened a repair shop, married a woman named Helen, and raised a son. He taught geometry by drawing angles in the dirt. He never called himself a hero, but the Army remembered. Years later, Fort Sill instructors began teaching a concept called asymmetrical engagement sequencing, the art of collapsing enemy formations through selective targeting. It traced back to one battle near Noeville. No names were attached, but the diagrams matched Thompson's. Decades later, a historian found Captain Langston's report in a box of World War II records. He tracked down Thompson, now in his 80s, living quietly with his wife and a cat named Murphy. When asked about that day, Thompson paused. I remember the trees, he said, how still it was before the first shot, like the world was holding its breath. He didn't speak of victory or regret, only necessity. When the historian asked why he didn't wait for orders, Thompson replied, because by the time the radio worked, it would have been too late. He smiled faintly. I didn't break the rules. I just stepped past them long enough to do what had to be done. Ray Thompson didn't win the war, but he saved a road. He saved lives. And in war, sometimes that's everything. Because courage doesn't always shout. Sometimes it calculates. Sometimes it whispers. And sometimes it pulls the trigger. Not out of defiance, but out of duty. One gunner, one decision, one pattern, and an entire German column brought to its knees.